On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk crossover products for commercial and residential. Axios is a new customer support platform, and smart home technology and abuse, what you need to know. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek episode 126, Crossover Products.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Access Networks and by HD Base T.
Welcome to ResiWeek. This is your weekly wrap-up of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matthew Scott for AVNation.tv, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Jason Knott. He is the editor of CE Pro. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today, Matt.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. And we also have Mitchell Klein. He is the executive director of the Z-Wave Alliance. How are you, sir?
Fabulous. Great to be here again. Thank you, Matt.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. Gentlemen, let's kick this right off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. This is written by Mark Corbin of Vanco. Which products can cross over effectively from residential to commercial? If you or when you read through this article, Mark goes over a couple of things, talking about the opportunities for your product line to fit both like commercial and residential. And a couple of things that he touches on are things like extenders and switchers and some of the cables that, you know, are really well suited for both residential and commercial and fit the niche for that as well. And he also gets into, you know, some of the things that you'd think fit and don't exactly fit, like plenum HDMI cables, like the crossover point of where AV over IP right. is much more effective versus, you know, just doing a traditional matrix from a scale and price point situation. Very good article. Jason, I wanted to jump off this one with you. When we're looking at things like this, as far as, you know, trying to modify our supply chain, you know, figure out which products are the best fit for us, is this strictly a business decision? What goes into these conversations as we're looking at, you know, hey, this is an HD-based T extender that fits every residential project we do, but also can work very well in, you know, all the light commercial we do. What drives that conversation?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I think integrators are looking for efficiencies if they can, and, you know, if they can reduce the number of SKUs that they're carrying, and there's a product or products that can cross between the commercial and the residential realm, I think it's an opportunity for them. This is going to happen more and more. You know, I think our latest data that we did in the CE Pro State of the Industry in January showed 30% of all revenues for a residential integrator now come from the commercial space. Mm-hmm. And I was just visiting a distributor last week, and he told me matter-of-factly that 5 years ago he was 90% residential, 10% commercial. This year it'll be 60% resi, 40% commercial, and he thinks next year he'll be 50-50. Really? So the trend is definitely there. I'd throw in one other product I think is interesting is you would think flat panels would be an interchangeable, but no, there's, I think, very distinct lines of demarcation between flat panels for the commercial realm and the residential of to throw in another product that Mark Corbin didn't mention.
It's interesting you bring that up because we've actually had conversations with not only clients but other integrators who are using, you know, commercial panels extensively in residential because they don't always want to use, you know, all the smart TV stuff, all the bells and whistles that come with it. They just want a rock solid panel that's going to last, you know, 5-10 years without any issue. They'll throw a 4K, you know, LG hospitality panel into master bedrooms and stuff like that because they're running, you know, they're really just using that as a display. So that's an interesting point. Mitch, I want to come to you with this question. What other products, what other, you know, we don't need to get into specific SKUs, for example, but what other industries, what other vertical product lines really can transition one to the other?
Well, you know, this has been going on for forever. I mean, my integration company back in the early 90s we're always looking at Infocom, at commercial products, and those that dovetailed logically into your residential projects. The key for us was to find something that could do multiple duty. They could do both.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got, from a business perspective, you're diving into doing commercial work, and then you're trying to find commercial products that'll work into the residential side. Perfect example is just simply looking at pro audio products. There are quite a few pro audio products that make a whole lot of sense, whether you're talking about line arrays or even just certain applications where certain speakers, or again, not getting into brand specific, but stuff like Biamp, things like that, that really do make a whole lot of sense when you're talking about certain residential projects. And then you get into the technology side, whereby we start looking at balanced audio. And I remember, again, going way back as an integrator, finding out that, oh, wait a minute, I can run balanced line audio, and I can run signals, around the house, around the room, long distances where you really couldn't even run it more than 10, 12 feet. So it's a logical thing. And as an integrator, look at products and technologies that can dovetail both. Don't really segment. I think that's the thing you got to be careful about.
Well, I think even to pull off your pro audio side of things, one thing that always surprised me is when you'd go and, do a site survey and you'd find all these, outdoor spaces and everything is 8 ohm. And you look at it and go, no, this should be 70. This is 70 volt would be fantastic here. You get so much better coverage.
Yeah, and it was always the perspective that, hey, 70 volts, you got no frequency response, stuff sucks. It's like, your drugstore sound. But that's because that was the product that was used, not the technology.
Yeah, exactly. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Axius is a customer support platform for the smart home. If you haven't heard of Axius, their web address is axi.us. They are a full-service customer service support platform for a smart home. They're providing management, maintenance, and ongoing monitoring for any device connected on Wi-Fi to the network. They're targeting a bunch of people, both builders and integrators alike, to try and sell this service, this platform. Mitch, I want to come back and start with you on this one. When we look at this, I don't want to say I'm skeptical, but I'm a little skeptical of this, partially just because they're saying that they're the only people that are doing this. And I'm pretty sure there's a couple others out there, but notwithstanding, the big thing that kind of caught me and hit me as this isn't completely making sense, is they say that they have created the only intelligent 24/7 management and backend support remote monitoring platform for any smart home device that connects via Wi-Fi. You're the head of the Z-Wave Alliance, which is not Wi-Fi. There are a lot of other, communication standards out there that are being used, and there's a lot of devices that we as integrators actively do not put on Wi-Fi. Is this I guess?
Hey, you're taking all of my comments.
I'm sorry. But can we call this a complete platform or a full monitoring solution if it's only based on Wi-Fi?
Okay, I got a couple of comments. Number one, I have met with them before, and I think they're good folks with good intention and good plans. So number one, I think that they may be a little naive in terms of what's out there right now. So to make a claim that they're the only ones, and then in the same claim they say they're using Domots, that tells you right off the bat you're not the only one because Domots is doing it. So look, we already know they're not the only ones. Okay, that's fine. They may have a different spin. Okay. I read the same information you did in terms of requiring Wi-Fi, and then in the same article, it's like, okay, you can see if access for your door locks, if let's say you're managing a property and your tenants can't get in. Okay, door locks are not Wi-Fi. There is no door lock that uses Wi-Fi, and the simple reason is because if you use the Wi-Fi door lock, you'd be changing your batteries every week. Yep. So we already know they don't. And then in the same breath, they're saying they're using August as an example. In case you're not aware of it, August is now using Z-Wave. Okay, so you got a Z-Wave door lock, but only Wi-Fi connection. And then in the same article, they talk about using Philips Hue, which is, they're using a proprietary version of Zigbee. So I'm not clear exactly what they're referencing to. Are they really saying you need a Wi-Fi bridge in there, which they talk about smart things. Smart things will connect multiple technologies. So let's be clear, it's not clear.
Perfect. Well, and that was, as I was reading through it, that was the big question I had was, is the Wi-Fi statement really just we need something that's on the network,
That's my bet.
wireless that we can connect?
Yeah, my bet is it's just misstated. They're talking about network-based. That would be my bet. And then the difference from their marketing perspective is, unlike Domotes and OneVision and others who are doing some pretty good things, they're saying, okay, we're for property managers, we're for builders, we're for so on and so forth. And there are other platforms doing it. And I'm very, very anxious to see really what it looks like behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And, they got some good backing and some smart people and really good people. So I think it's worth kind of watching, but I'd love to get that stuff cleaned up so we really know what they're doing.
Jason, taking all of that information and then, kind of focusing in on the fact that they're saying that they're for builders and property managers and people such as that, opposed to maybe for integrators, even though they do state that. Is this another one of those devices that, or product markets that integrators really should be in, but the manufacturers are almost pushing us out of and going to those property managers opposed to integrators?
I mean, I'm a big proponent of remote management. You and I have talked about it before. In fact, I made the remark that somebody mentioned to me once that when I die, my epitaph is not going to say RIP, but it's going to say RMR because we write about it so often on CE Pro. So I'm a big proponent of remote management. And, again, to Mitch's point, I'd love to see behind the curtain here a little bit more about what their ticketing system is and all those sorts of things that kind of, crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But in a general sense, the trend absolutely, and we're big proponents of having integrators sign remote management contracts, it creates some sort of a recurring revenue stream for their business. It doesn't mean you have to. I was just with an integrator last week in New York who absolutely doesn't do it. They charge $395 an hour on the weekend, weekend nights, $295 on the weekends and $195 regular. So they've done the math and said, we can do this without having a remote management contract in place and make money in our service. So, I think Mitch and you and I did an article 10 years ago about how to determine if your service department is profitable. If you remember that you wrote for us. So it's an old story, but it's still an ongoing one that I think, the trend is actually growing. I think 3 years ago, our data showed 3% of dealers' revenues come from a recurring revenue stream. And the latest data was like 8%. Still not close to what you're going to get in the security business, but a growing percent for sure.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to our next and most likely last story of the day. This comes to us from the New York Times. Thermostats, locks, lights, digital tools of domestic abuse. I'm not going to read through this entire story because it is.
Please don't.
I'm not going to. It's quite lengthy. But the gist of it is that there seemed to be I don't even know how to phrase this properly. It's not a push, but what people that are running domestic help hotlines and domestic violence shelters are saying that they're hearing reports of people in those situations who feel that their smart home technology is being used against them in terms of, just making them uncomfortable, making them feel not at ease, to the point of monitoring everything that they're doing when their spouse or partner is not home and they are. They're talking about a pattern of behavior where lights are changing, door lock codes are changing constantly, and they're locked out from these things. So I don't want to dig in too much on this beyond what we talked about, but I want to look at it from the integrator side, because I am not the one to speak on domestic abuse. I don't know enough about it, and I'm definitely not the authority on it. And that's not what we do. We talk about tech. But what I wanted to get into, and Jason, I'm going to come to you on this. When we start looking at this, one of the big things that caught my eye when I read this article was they were talking about how a partner had all of this technology put in, and he was given full control over it, full, ownership, if you will, from the app standpoint and from the management side. And he had allowed his spouse to have some control, and then was taking it away and changing things, and really kind of running that situation and making her feel not at ease. What is an integrator's responsibility? Because this has come up. If you've ever sold anything like this and installed it, this has been something that's come up. You usually, whoever's signing the check is usually the one who gets full admin rights. And a lot of times, I'll even say in our company, we don't really have a system as far as, having both parties or everyone who lives at the home sign off on, these are the products that we're putting in, and you're getting control of it and you're not, et cetera, et cetera. Like, my wife does not know how to probably change ownership of our door locks.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing up the exact questions that I had when I read the article, which is from the integrator standpoint of what liability is there? And I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the answer to that, but it begs the question of, should integrators' contracts going forth have some sort of a clause in there that absolves them from this sort of a liability issue? I don't know. But and I don't want to get nasty letters to you or Tim, but it kind of reminds me of the NRA argument where they say guns aren't the problem, the people who use the guns are. And you could make the same case here. The technology is not the problem here. It's the people who are using the technology. So I don't know how the technology can be liable in a situation like this, but at the same time, people sue gun manufacturers.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the further question on that is maybe not what's, how are we liable for it or how do we protect ourselves, but how do we create a best practice to know that, hey, if you're, installing an automated door lock, that you give ownership to both parties.
Yeah, or maybe this is some sort of a service opportunity. Maybe it's a service opportunity for an integrator to go back and say, hey, I can come back in and do a clean sweep password change or a connectivity change based for a flat fee. I'm just making this up, but maybe it becomes that sort of an opportunity. Mitch, I'm sorry, I talked over you there. Go ahead.
No, you're right. It's a double-edged sword here. I mean, you can't leave a back door open in order for an integrator to come in and fix this. You can't do that. I mean, oh my God, that can create all kinds of other potential hacking problems.
Yeah.
How do you lock down an approval? And it's not just a domestic abuse issue. Think about someone sells their house, right?
Yeah.
And now the new owners come in, and the old owners could potentially keep a back door open and have access to it. So this cuts into so many different areas and is way beyond the scope of an integrator. To start getting into legal issues like that, I don't know. Do you want to put a single-page contract that says, I hereby approve the fact that only Mr. Jones is going to have access to the system and not Mrs.? Or do you want to cross that line and even imply that something like this could potentially happen to the couple when you're meeting with the happy couple and say, well, Mr., in case you abuse, and this is, no thanks.
Well, and I think that's the hard thing is you read through this and, I called Tim out as soon as he sent it to me. I'm like, why are you trying to get me in trouble? What are you doing to me? But it is a big thing of, who does have the rights? How do you as the integrator do the best you possibly can to ensure that all parties are aware of what's going on and that you're, making a secure system going forward?
This reminds me, we did an article a few weeks ago, I don't know if you guys saw it, about who actually owns the video that is recorded from a video doorbell.
I didn't see that.
The homeowner might think that they own it. They don't own it.
No.
Whoever's storing that or doing the recording is the actual owner. And it came up in a case because a homeowner wanted to see the video because there'd been a fight out on the curb in front of the house. And one of the passersby said he wanted to see the video so he could, conceivably prove that he wasn't the aggressor in the fight. and ended up being a legal issue. But this reminds me of you guys might remember, I want to say it was 2015 or 2016, the keynoter at CEDIA Expo, Michael Rogers, said that you will have customers who will pay you more to keep you disconnected than your customers are paying you today to connect you.
Yeah, I don't think they're wrong.
I don't think so either.
And I think that's a really good point that you made about the doorbells is when we look at this, we all assume just because we own it or it's installed in our house that we own all of it and we have access to all of it. And that's not always the case. So going forward, I guess our takeaway from this is that you need to talk to your lawyers.
Well, again, like we've said, it's not just about the potential for abuse. There's a lot of other exposure points. So hopefully there's a single point where that can be addressed.
But again, I guess the key is making sure that you're securing these systems properly and you secure yourself. So on that lovely high note, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on this episode. Jason, if people want to connect with you, learn more about CE Pro, where can they do that?
They can always go to cepro.com or they can follow me on Twitter at Jason W. Knott.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for being here. Mitchell, thanks again for joining us. Sorry we missed you at Infocom. If people want to connect with you, learn more about the Z-Wave Alliance, where can they do that?
Well, you can always go to the zwavealliance.org, and there's a dash there, z-wavealliance.org, or reach out to me with Mitch at z-wavealliance.org.
Beautiful. Again, thanks so much for joining us. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and every other social platform. But more importantly, please stop by AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our underwriters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you support them as well. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.